look to see what we can potentially borrow from other communities that may already be doing some of this as well. So I guess, you know, additional litigation is one is costly, but it also takes time and focus, and it takes our time and focus away from doing other work, and that's a concern I have. So the other option on this is not to extend and to the urgency ordinance, and we try to bring you back urgency ordinance. It may be bite-sized pieces. It might be, all right, here's single family, and here's multifamily. It may be done in some pieces to try to
and so we still would have like another month into the first of the year, technically, if we just let things hang as they are.
Yes. It doesn't immunize us from a challenge to that existing ordinance you passed on Monday, of course, but it certainly will expire in 45 days.
Well, by the time someone filed anything and anything happened, it would already be gone. Honestly.
I have a question. In one of the letters we received from Californians for home ownership, one of the points that was kind of interesting to me, they said, our best guess of the city's rationale for imposing this moratorium is that portions of its existing land use regulations impose subjective rules that the city believes might now be invalid and unenforceable under SB 330. Perhaps that would be a reasonable justification, but if the requirement for using subjective land use regulations were actually new to SB 330, but they're not. Subjective rules were outlawed in the Housing Accountability Act and was passed in the early 1980s. Is that a true statement?
No.
I don't know when the subjective standards were included in the Housing Accountability Act, but they are in there.
Okay, but that may be in a later amendment.
It may have been. I don't know how long they've been there. But that's certainly, as you know, one of the grounds that the Jasper lawsuit is based on.
Right, yeah. Okay. Cool. All right, we'll bring this up for public comment. Member of the public, if you'd like to come forward, state your name and your address.
My name is Robert Bauman. I am an architect here in Sonoma. I've been practicing for a little over 17 years. I do primarily single-family residential projects, and I've spoken with a few other architects in town who also have done numerous residential projects here in Sonoma, and I know we share the same opinion. I'd like to give you my opinion about two aspects to this. It's all very complicated, and I hope that I understand what is actually taking place. My understanding is that you're going to extend a moratorium on residential projects, both single family and multifamily. Is that correct?
The chair
Go ahead.
want us to respond
go
to
to the
that?
answer. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay. It certainly applies to a single-family residential structure. However, the council has exempted multifamily dwelling projects in which multifamily housing consists of at least 1/3 of the total square footage of the project. So
Okay.
if multifamily component consumes at least 1/3 of the square footage of the project, it's exempt.
Okay. And would a single family residential structure be exempt?
No.
Okay. So my opinion, and that shared by other architects, is that they should be. Single family structures should be exempt on properties where they're going to be replacing a house either through demolition or for whatever reason, disaster. When the use is not changing, a single family house should be allowed to continue to be another single family house. Remodel, replacement houses, that sort of thing. So whether that is done through adding an exemption or changing the definition, I feel strongly that should be done. The repercussions, if it's not done, could be far-reaching in terms of local economy, in terms of potential lawsuits from people wanting to do homes. I just think that would be a no-brainer. It seems to me that the point of SB 330 is to help speed up housing in the state, which is definitely needed. And then on that note, I want to make my second point, and that is I think that the moratorium should be continued for these larger projects because if it is not and the bill goes into effect, it's going to result in poorly designed projects in this area, potentially. The process as it's set up, while it may be cumbersome and may be fraught with frustration for applicants, ends up in projects that are considered, carefully considered and thought out. And I think so for that I support. But for residential single-family homes, they should be exempted from this moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baumann. All right. Anybody else like to comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for councilmember comments. Councilmember Agrimonti.
Thanks. So I have single-family homes. If you're in my neighborhood, if you take down this little, in Italian, baracca, little cottage and build a 5,000, because they have a lot of land, a 5,000 square house, what has that got to do with affordable housing? If we're talking about single-family homes, is that, I could be off track, but this is.
I don't believe that a single-family home of any size really deals with affordable housing unless it might have a junior accessory dwelling unit built into it, or it has a detached accessory dwelling unit as part of the plan. That might provide some affordable housing. But if you're just talking about a single structure for a single-family home, that would be included in the moratorium, and you could not approve it, as in the city could not approve such a development project as long as this moratorium is in place.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Councilmember Harrington.
Can you prohibit like individual, like projects versus individual houses? So if you say single family dwellings, but you want to build 30 of them, is that different?
You could distinguish between the two, that a single-family home and a single lot would be exempt, but any project with single-family homes greater than one could be captured and caught within the prescriptions of the moratorium. It gets a little dicey when we start wanting to move the pieces here and add exemptions and change what you did on Monday. That becomes a little difficult because that means we need to sit here and craft language, and also you are changing what you did on Monday, and it's not an extension. You're actually creating a new moratorium.
That's why I was asking on Monday if it could be changed since we did it so quickly, and I thought the answer, I understand the issues about crafting it, but I thought the answer was we could exempt more later, but we could not bring more in.
Yeah, put my feet to the fire, I'd say probably that's okay. Because
It's just if we exempt a lot of stuff, I think is kind of the point, right? If we start exempting all types of different things, then it basically effectively comes anew.
and also you begin to undermine what the moratorium is trying to do in the first place.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a few thoughts on this. I mean, I kind of want to hear from council in general. I mean, our idea here is to try to give staff some time to get rid of, or change our code so that we have subjective standards away from objectives. We have objective standards away from subjective standards. Okay, sorry. And I think that the moratorium would help. We asked David Storr multiple times. Yes, it would be helpful to him, but the threat of litigation, I mean, we're talking about spending taxpayer funds. That's something that definitely concerns me. And it sounds like we will be sued. The three people who sent us letters.
Oh, these three organizations are all related. Two of them are literally the people that sued us over the Hillside home, and they're just mad at us because they lost. So maybe they would, but I think that if it was a short period of time, just to give staff time to catch up, because we're just always trying to catch up with things, and I think that giving them a small break, I wouldn't do 10 months, but I think that giving some time to focus and just get it done. Something that, we've been realizing increasingly that needs to go back and, fix things so that the results equal what people's expectations are. So, but I don't know. I don't think you can live your life being afraid someone's gonna sue you, because I don't think they will, but maybe they will, but you never know. You
I
can always
mean-
get sued after every decision you make.
Of course, but I just think, question if the juice is worth the squeeze, right? Like how much benefit are we going to get from not doing this versus how much is this going to cost? That's my question. And I'm not necessarily arguing for either side of that. I just kind of want to hear council's opinion about it. That's kind of where I'm starting with it. So if we do 4 months and it costs us, a couple $100,000, $25,000, I mean, what are we all comfortable with?
I guess my concern is that what we're doing, because we have to allow the multifamily, is that we're taking people that work in the community, local people, and telling them they can't do their projects. And then anyone who wants to build a large project, which are probably the ones we're more concerned about, all they gotta do is slap in some multifamily, which they will to make their project work, and then they can be exempted. So I feel like it hurts the opposite of the people we want. It doesn't stop what we really want, which is not to have
Big, crappy.
huge, ugly developments, and then it hurts kind of local people that are working on individual projects. That's my concern about it, that it's hitting the wrong target. But
And I think that's a really fair point. I mean, it's, I think Mr. Bauman's points are well brought. I would, I don't personally want to, I don't personally support a bunch of like tear downs and then rebuilds to houses that are significantly larger. But if people want to make small additions to their homes and stuff like that, I don't necessarily want to get in the way.
Does this affect people putting additions on their homes?
It does. No, it doesn't.
No. Remodels of or additions to existing residential structures are exempt.
I mean, I would say that if our number one form of housing development is single-family homes, then this would actually be addressing more than we thought we were. So if the whole idea is just to give time to fix things, I think something short, like I know that 3 or 4 months might not be quite enough for staff to get all of it done, but I think that it would give some time to work on it, and then I think it would reduce the risk of an adverse
Would
action.
would council, Councilmember Cook, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say my opinion. I will be supporting this tonight because when we were discussing on Monday, we talked in length about all this, and I don't like supporting this, but I feel the city of Sonoma is kind of put in a weird position because we do not have great ordinance language. It's something that we'll be working on. I'm hoping this time frame will be cut very shortly, but there's a point in time that we have to protect our local control. And like I said last Monday, this does not make any sense. I understand that, but it's all we have. So I will be supporting this tonight.
I have a question. So, like a tear down rebuild, that would be blocked in the moratorium, yeah?
Yes, it would.
And so when does reconstruction or addition become a tear down rebuild? Does it just be any amount of demolition creates that? Because I mean, if you're going to add an addition to your house, you have to tear down a wall, right? And then
I know there are standards, but I don't know what they are. Wayne Wyrick would know that, and Dave Storer may know that, but I don't.
okay,
I don't know where you cross the line.
right.
through the chair, whatever you like.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Just on the point, again, this is Robert Bauman, just on the point of demolition, at the Special Planning Commission hearing that happened a month ago, November 22nd, I think it was the 22nd, we had unanimous approval from the Planning Commission to create a new definition of demolition to include and acknowledge the fact that the building code and which the building department enforces and the planning guidelines, which include design review, aren't compatible, and that they are now going to write new language to allow replacement of framing that will put projects that are not being just leveled but replaced to meet energy codes and building codes to not be considered demolition. So that leans towards what you're asking. And I've got a project coming up that would be done in 2020 that is a house that has to be preserved with an addition on it, but we got to demo part of it, so that
That would be listed as new that would be listed as demolition currently, is what you're saying?
right. Well, hopefully, once this language gets written, which has not been followed through yet from last month's meeting, it won't be considered demolition. It's just going to be considered necessary construction to do what needs to be done. Where demolition should be thought of as a house being removed or demolished entirely. That language still has to be written, like I said. But yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baumann.
I would like to say one last thing. It's unclear whether or not buying time will relieve the city from having to adopt these rules and regulations and objective fire standards by January 1. It won't really. We have to have those in place by January 1 because SB 330 does something else that's important. It ties the applicable regulations to those that are in effect when the application for a residential project is complete. Under the old law, as I mentioned, I think last meeting, only the Subdivision Map Act imposed such a requirement, that once an application for a subdivision became complete, then at that point in time, all the city's rules that applied to that subdivision process, even though it might have taken years before the council actually approved it, the laws in effect when the application was complete are those that are frozen in time. SB 330 does that now with housing development projects. So even though we may have this moratorium in place that prohibits us from approving projects that are covered by it, we may still be required to have objective standards in place when these applications are deemed complete.
Well, my thought with all of this, even with that, is just the actual work of the planning department and the fact that we've never been able to do this because we're always like working on other things. So that's the utility I see. I don't know how staff thinks about it, but so it's like the applications are coming regardless. It's just sort of like when they have to pick them up and if they had a few months off to just like get through this, because otherwise we keep putting it at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, I think what the moratorium really is buying you is two things. One, maybe folks don't put in right away. They wait because they want clarity, number one. And then number two, it potentially does give staff time because people are put their applications, but there's still timing of how we have to process some of those. So I don't think we can just, is that correct? There are some timelines.
Timelines will be made the same.
There are timelines within SB 330 that we still have to meet. So we can't kind of put these things on hold.
Can I just ask, what are the steps to make an application complete? I mean, broadly, not.
The city is required by January 1, actually it's required right now, to develop a list of things that make a complete application. An application form, drawings, plans, specifications, identification of the zoning that's applicable, a copy of the zoning map. The list typically is 20 to 40 items long. It depends on the project that's being applied for. So once all those items are submitted, that application is deemed complete. You cannot require the equivalent, for example, of an EIR in terms of the information.
So somebody could turn their application in and it could be complete on the day they turn it in.
That's true.
If it is complete, correct. A lot of times it gets reviewed, we kick a letter back and it's, you're missing this or this isn't this. And so sometimes it takes a time or two for an application to be complete, especially definitely in larger projects. But so,
Sorry to interrupt.
that's okay.
Well, I support this. I support the moratorium because I think it's a preparation time to be able to meet these demands. One of the things I know, when you're a city council member, mayor, when you get elected to the legislature, within 6 months, you're part of the tribe, one or the other. They don't think back to the cities. That's gone. The other thing is, you know what? I really believe if the thieves hadn't taken the redevelopment money from us, they've been trying to do it for over 20 years. Now they've got our money. And now what are they doing? They want us to build with nothing. We have a housing trust fund, paltry, right? We're doing the best we can. But I don't understand, and a lot of the issues we have been because of citizens' complaints. And, you know, we've had to acquiesce because of that. And I know one city in particular, I can't remember, I think it was San Bruno, they had a project. And what happened to them was the whole neighborhood came out and said, don't you dare do this. So they said, okay, we won't, and then the state came down. Just came down on them. It's hard to have these positions because unlike LA or larger cities, you know, you never shop at Safeway with your constituency. But here I think it's really important. I don't know about a win-win, but I do know that the state took our money. And what did we do before we had redevelopment? When we had redevelopment, we were pretty darn good. We did a lot of wonderful things here, but now we don't have any money. And so that's, you know, for me, that's the issue. I really support this moratorium because it might sharpen us how to deal with whatever's coming. The Harbinger, capital H. Thanks. So I do support this.
I think I could support it as written for maybe 2 months, given the possibility of litigation. I would prefer to spend the money that we would spend on litigation on a contract planner who would do the work that's necessary. I think that's probably the only way we could do it, and it's unfortunate that we have to spend money doing that, but I don't see how our staff is ever gonna be freed up to do it, and there must be some best practices that we can adopt from other places so we don't have to do it whole cloth. But I think if it were 2 months, it's annoying and a setback for people that live here, but if I just can't imagine anybody suing us, and if they did, it would be moot by the time it came forward. And then during that time, we could use it to get the contract planner in place now, if it's difficult, but get somebody in place now so that they could work on the most important items first. So that's what I would support.
I think that's a smart strategy. Yeah, is there broad support of the council for that?
I don't think 2 months. I mean, it's already really into Christmas, so 1 month is sort of still in January. I mean, I'm thinking 4 months myself, but I guess 3 months is better than nothing. But I just think that they at least need a little bit of time once they. I mean, and I agree that I would support putting a lot of resources into this because it's just something that needs to be done.
So if council recalls, just on the resource issue, we came either early December, end of November with a request, and we talked about a variety of housing for some additional funding. I don't remember right now off the top. I want to say 25,000, 30,000 is what council approved. So Christine O'Rourke, who presented to you on Monday, who worked with David on the ADU as a contract planner, and so she's working with David now on the application, and then they're going to start working. So they're, you know, we have someone who can assist, and if we need additional assistance, we can do this. You know, I think having a tighter time frame is a strategy that could work. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 months, if we're going to do it at all, would be. So keep it tighter, and as staff will drive it. As you all know, we do have some other, and this is always the tough thing, right? Competing priorities, both with the UGB conversation, which is, again, same people that need to be putting some of that together. And then there's also, we have some timelines with the cell towers that are also, there are legal consequences. So that's just part of, you know, what staff is facing, and which is why some additional assistance has been brought in. And if we need more, we'll come back to you if that's necessary.
And do recall that the existing moratorium will last through, most of January. It's 45 days, so when you decide how long this ordinance is going to be, it tacks onto the already in place ordinance. So when you talk about 3 months, you're adding 3 months to whatever the current ordinance is lasting for. So
I was thinking through the end of February, whatever that is.
Well,
that would be actually 1 more month.
the UGB I feel is a good point because it is something else that has gotten
Shuffled.
has been a casualty of all of the things, and that I think, well, that I don't think that can be, that just needs to happen also. So in light of that, then I would support 2 months plus our 45 days.
What would be the end date?
You could set a hard end date.
March 31st?
Could you set a hard end date?
Hard date, you could set a hard date. You could set a hard date. It would be easier just to simply say 2 months in terms of structuring this ordinance. Section 8 of the ordinance says, "This ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its adoption and shall, 1, extend the ordinance of Monday night for 10 months and 15 days, and remain," we do put a hard date, "remain in effect until midnight on December 15, 2020. So if you said 2 months beyond the existing, that would put us probably into.
Let's just say March 31.
That'd be March 31?
I mean, I would prefer it being the end of February.
It's the
This
council's
is where
call.
I wish David Storr was here, because then I could ask him, who he needs in terms of time, and I understand that's just what it is, but.
Yeah, I did talk with David. He had a family commitment this afternoon
That's
and
fine.
couldn't be here. But, I think what's really hard is it's kind of like, our code is like this and we got to like dive into it. And so we haven't had that capacity or time. So there's really, we know it's going to take a chunk of time. We just don't know how much until you really get into it. And that's where so that's what's difficult. But
So I've had some tangential conversations with David about, subjective and objective standards, and there's some parts of the code that he's identified as like kind of the glaring errors. So it seems like we could at the very least get those done, and then obviously we can still continue to dig into code as time goes on, right, without the cover of the moratorium. So I think this would definitely give us the time to take care of the kind of more visible holes and maybe some of the kind of less visible ones, and then we can dig more into the nuances as time goes on.
yeah, and I think the other way to do it is there may be some places where let's say there's other cities that have really put together some fairly strong objective standards for single family homes.
Yeah.
Again, it may not be everything we want, but maybe it covers 85%. And we bring those and we get 85% covered. And then
Yeah.
we can go in and we can polish that 85 to another 100. So again, I think there's some different ways a staff looks at this that, it's, what are those kind of really important items we want to cover first, and how we may do kind of a first pass, and then we may come back and put some additional meat on those bones.
Yeah, if there's stuff we can pull from other cities, that'd be great. Sorry, Councilmember Cook.
And I guess since we're dating it and trying to look backwards, if you put a hard date of March 31st, you have to have a first reading and a second reading? Or is this,
No, our approach would be, given the brevity of what the council is talking about right now, would come back with an urgency ordinance that would adopt those standards, just as we did with the ADUs. As you know, we came forward with an ADU ordinance, fairly extensive. We adopted that as an urgency ordinance. It's in effect right now. And meanwhile, we then go back and fine tune it a bit, and now it's being pushed through the commission, and it'll come back for the council as a permanent ordinance, and at that time, we will repeal the urgency ordinance that you adopted a meeting or so ago.
okay, so that hard date at that point could be March 31st, the one that you were talking about at the beginning.
The March 31st one, the hard date would be the date that this ordinance we're talking about this evening would last until.
Yeah,
We
but I'm
could
just
do-
making sure that we have enough time to have something there in place.
I think that gives us, January, February, that gives us 3 months.
I think 3 months, and
And
then
I'm confident that would be enough time.
So Jeff, can I ask one other question on this? Because I think this again goes to broader strategy. Just as the council, okay, typically when you do an urgency ordinance, you do 45. You can do a max of 10 and another 15, and then you can do one more year. But we could not do that third phase. Is that
No.
correct? All right, I just
I'm-
want to be
I'm-
clear for.
Yeah. We're gonna
So
have
this
2
is
bites
kind
of
of-
this apple.
this
You
is
get
it
3,
for the
but we're
apple.
gonna only get 2.
Yep. So I just wanted council, there will not be an ability to extend again. This will be it.
We understand. Councilmember Cook?
Yeah, so this is our recommendation, but if let's say that March 31st comes by and everything's put together, then we can always retract this moratorium, be replaced.
Oh, you
by-
mean if it was a year long, we could end it before then?
Yeah, on
Yes.
March 31st.
Yes, you could. You could adopt it for 10 months and 15 days as it's currently structured, but at any time during that period of time, you can repeal this.
because that's kind of why I'm supporting it, because I know on Monday night we were talking about doing this as quick as we can, but I do know earthquakes, flooding, things like this that happen. I loved Councilmember Harrington's idea about having a contract come in, private contractor. And if staff is saying that the city manager has the ability to do that under the $30,000 limit, then I would be supporting it.
Great.
I think the downside of having a longer one, which I agree, usually I think I'd want to be more conservative and give them more time, but I think that having something short kind of gives everyone assurances that it will indeed only be short because it has to be short.
Yeah.
And I think it also perhaps reduces our risk of getting in trouble or people who don't like us suing us again.
Yeah, I mean that's why I like the shorter date too. It's a date of assurance for them, and then the risk of only because we sued you is why you got this done quickly and under the ordinance, and then having to go through a second litigation to prove that out. I think it kind of limits those possibilities. Go ahead, just jump in.
Yeah. But there is minutes to this meeting, and is it on? I mean, is it on Channel 27?
Go ahead.
I don't believe it's on 27, but it is being streamed on our website, and it'll be on the YouTube channel.
Yeah. So we would have notes and minutes from this meeting and what was discussed.
We should sit up.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Oh, I was gonna make a motion.
Okay, I'll wait.
All
That's
right.
good.
I'll make a motion to adopt it as written for a period which will terminate on, what was your suggestion? March 31.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Harrington,
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hundley,
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Can I just ask a quick question? So now that this is in place, people can still submit applications, they can be deemed complete, but their first chance to talk to staff about their application or work on it won't be until after? Or no?
No, the staff will have to respond to the applications. The law requires that the staff look at the application and make a determination whether it's complete, and they have to do that within 30 days of the application's filing, and then the process gets going. There's no delays that this moratorium in terms of processing will cause.
Okay, so people can still have their applications processed at the beginning of the year,
They can.
just not heard or something?
They can even have them heard. If they get them heard when this moratorium is in place, it will be denied.
Oh, okay.
We hope we don't go through that worthless
So,
exercise.
but I'm saying that they can be heard and approved if the planning commission wants to, but it won't be
They
till
can't
after
approve
this
it.
period is over.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we gotta do closing the meeting stuff.
You can, actually, this is the end, you can just adjourn.
Okay.
And happy
Adjourned.
holidays.